Senator Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Hochberg, for your leadership in this area. I'd like to follow up on where Senator Shelby started, and talking about the goal of the Ex-Im Bank is to promote U.S. exports. And of course, increasing exports is ultimately supposed to create more jobs at home. But in some cases, those two things may be in tension with each other. For example, a loan to a foreign country, a company to buy a U.S. product may increase U.S. exports, but it may also give that foreign company a leg up over its American competitors, thus costing us jobs here at home for the American company. So how do you balance those two things in making a loan decision?
Gingerly. Our job and our charter calls for us to create those balances and to do that analysis. One of the tools we use to do that is called economic impact. What that really means is we look at what's the impact of making this export, and could there be any harm caused by making this export, and balance those two against each other. In fact, I had a feeling I'd get this question. We have got on our website, there's an 18-page guide to how we conduct economic impact procedures. So any exporter can know exactly how we're going to make that assessment, what analysis we'll use before we make it. Our goal is purely about increasing U.S. jobs. We have zero interest, we have no dog in this race in terms of harming the U.S. economy when it comes to jobs. So we've got to do that balancing act, and it's tricky. We have to make a number of assumptions, but we've put that out to the exporters. We've taken that comments, we've created the procedures, and we put them on our website.
All right, good. So you're telling me, though, that you carefully consider the impact if you make the loan, how it may help a foreign company compete against domestic companies that don't have access to that same kind of financing. Okay, good. We talked some about small business lending, and I was very pleased to see that in 2013 that you committed a greater percentage of your money to small business lending. I think that's terrific. But as everyone has been talking about, the bad news is we're still barely at 20% of the assets going into small business lending. Obviously, marginal increases in small business lending are a step in the right direction, but I'm concerned that marketing and outreach are not enough to expand small business lending. So can you describe some ways in which the bank could make some really meaningful increases in small business lending to push that number well beyond 20%?
Well, I think that I'll give you an example. What our competitors to the north in Canada do, they spend north of $3 million a year on advertising. They advertise in in-flight magazines throughout Canada to make sure that the business owners, who generally, if they're exporting their own planes, know about them. I think our largest single impediment is people don't know the support that we can offer them. One of the things we've did a pilot this year called U.S. Global Business Solutions. Frankly, it was a little disappointing. I'm hoping that we can pick that up, which is where Commerce, the SBA, and Ex-Im are going to be working more jointly, so that if you show up at an SBA office or a Commerce office or an Ex-Im office, you don't have to worry about where to go. We'll solve the problem and give you the right tool to do that. This is, I will tell you, I bring this up with my counterparts and competitors around the world. They're all having a difficult time with this. It's difficult to reach them. But let's remember, we did reach more small businesses last year than any other year in our history. We've well exceeded 20% in our first quarter of this year. I can't predict the second, third, and fourth quarter. And sometimes the good news is some small businesses are graduating and they're no longer counted as small. So that's the greatest success we have, is when they migrate up or they're now financially secure, they can actually go to a commercial bank. So the 20% is a barometer, but it's not a perfect index.
Well, fair enough that it's a barometer but not a perfect index, but it's also a modest goal. And I think a large part of what we'd like to see in supporting this is to go beyond the 20%. And so I look for to support every creative approach you're using. I recognize some of them may not work, but that we're out there trying to do it. And also the notion of reaching beyond just trying to market. What else we can do, what other kinds of programs we can put in place that help small businesses get into the export business. I had one other area I wanted to ask about very briefly, and that is that the Ex-Im's Bank charter makes it clear that the bank is supposed to supplement private capital, and you mentioned this in your testimony. In other words, you should provide public funds only when private funds are not available. I'm interested to know how you make sure that you are complying with that mandate. Is there a process in place to ensure that for every deal the bank does, that there was no private sector capital available?
It's one of the questions that an applicant has to complete and answer when making a loan application. Secondly, our process is very rigorous. I promise you, if there was another source of capital, most exporters would choose that source of capital. The requirements we have on economic impact, we just talked about, content, if it's a large product having to be shipped on U.S. merchant marine ships, the Iran sanctions we have put in, our default rate, there are many hurdles. So one, we don't make the process that simple. We're trying to make it more simple and more streamlined, but there are still a number of things because we are a government agency. But on top of that, a customer has to state affirmatively they could not get that loan. I'll give you just one example.
And let's be brief.
I'll be very fast. We've exported locomotives to South Africa. Of all the banks surveyed, one bank agreed to make the loan only with our guarantee. So it's one thing if we had 10 banks, you say, well, maybe to get 5 of them without a guarantee. We only got one applicant would even consider it, and that's only with our guarantee.
Well, I just want to say thank you very much. Thank you for the direction that you are pushing us in trade and for the successes you've had. And I hope we have many more that we can celebrate in 2014. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.